The Unemployed Actress, take one. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Unemployed Actress. I am Lobcke, I am her is she, and she is me. This week, we're going horror. It is October and I am a huge horror movie fan. I love horrors. So this week I decided, let's talk about it. Let's talk about some of my favorite horror movies and why. We are going to chat about black horrors today. So horror movies with black people in the leading cast, right? And what that watching experience is like. To kick things off, I'm going to start with one of my favorite horror movies, and that is His House. Now, I don't know if you've seen it, if you haven't seen it, if it's on your watch list and you are going to get to it expeditiously. Get to it quick, fast, in a hurry. Pause me and go watch His House. And then come back and see if you agree with what I'm about to say, because it is a phenomenal horror film. It is 100% on the tomato meter. It is just great. Oh, for those of you who don't know the tomato meter, Rotten Tomatoes, 100%, not easy to come by, and His House has done that. So I'm going to try to tell you about this film without any spoilers, because I really want everyone to go ahead and watch His House. His House is about a refugee couple from war-torn South Sudan who make their way to the UK. They become asylum seekers and they get placed in council housing, basically government housing in the UK. And while they are there, life sort of takes a different toll, right? For the wife, she sort of finds it difficult to acclimate because she's essentially African. She sits on the floor, she eats with her hand, and her husband is not having any of that. He's like, we're in England now, we're going to acclimate, we're going to assimilate, we are going to be one of them. So here's a knife and fork, here's a chair and table, this is how we eat now. And she's just like, I'm not trying to... I don't like this. There's a really funny line where she's eating with a fork and she goes, all I can taste is metal. And he's like, you'll get used to it. So that's sort of the premise, right? That's where the film starts. That's where we find them. And then, of course, as every horror goes, they start experiencing the sort of haunting in their house, as you will. And that's where we find the title, His House. Because the husband is so hell-bent on becoming English, on assimilating, on their lives now becoming day-to-day UK citizen lives, he's sort of like, this is their home. They're going to make their home here. They live by the government laws. They are going to become good people, good citizens, unproblematic, so that they can stay in this country, so that they don't go back to their war-torn country. And she just later on, as the film progresses, she sort of goes, they don't want us here, so they should send us back. And he's like, girl, have you forgotten where we come from? Have you forgotten the war, the experience we've had? The horrors we've seen? We are not going back. We live here now. And yeah, the story develops from there, and it's amazing. But the sticking point for me really is that the entity that haunts their house basically doesn't want them there. And it's so symbolic and metaphorical for the society they're in, right? It's a society that doesn't want them. It's a society they don't fit into. It's really, they've escaped horrors. They've made it through so much and just want to basically live. Just want to be safe and alive, and they found themselves in this country that just doesn't want them, and where there is people who have no issues telling them you don't belong here, go back. They come from a non-English speaking country, so they're here sort of learning the language, and the people are like, you can't speak English, yeah? You can't speak English, go back to your country. And it's just a harrowing experience for them, trying to make a home in a space that doesn't want them. And again, this thing that haunts their house really speaks to that immigrant experience, and what that's like, and making it through that, and sort of trying to continuously say, but like, I belong here, even when you feel like you don't belong here. It's really, oh, it's so good. It's such a good horror film. The shots in that film is insane. It's insanely beautiful shots. The scene sequences that they use for the Sudan scenes, these war scenes, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely stunning. It's striking in its horror. It's striking in how terrible the implied imagery is, or the imagery we're actually seeing is. You can tell that the director really, there was, and this is true for a lot of films, right? For most films, really, there is something to say when they are making these films. So there's really attention to detail in every shot that he has, that he's chosen, and in the color grade that he's chosen. When they move to the UK, it's all grey. It's all grey. The house is a council house. It's just in a terrible condition. It's in a terrible condition, and it's so funny. One of the throwaway lines that basically the immigration officer tells him is like, be one of the good ones. And it's like, jeez, okay. But yeah, it's really just their experience, and the horror aspect is this entity, but the entity speaks to something so much bigger than just something that haunts their house, really. So his house it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I cannot stress enough how much I want people to see it, because I just want to be able to talk about it with spoilers. I won't do that today, but it's a brilliant film. What really triggered this conversation for me was a couple of days ago. One of my friends called me at about midnight and was saying, "Hey, I've seen Get Out before, but now I'm sort of watching it and I'm paying attention. What do you think about it?" And I tell you, I was tired. I was 5 seconds to sleep. I woke right up. I sat up and I was like, okay, let's go. Let's get in. Because this is another horror film that is not immediately horror as we know it, right? Because the premise of a horror film is based off of fears. It's fears realized, and it's every generation, if you will, gets their sort of horror interpretation, whether it's the slashers, whether it's the torture porn, whether it's the kids, or it's the dolls. Every generation sort of gets it. But now we've got these black horror films that speaks to something larger than just a man in a mask coming to kill you, or a ghost haunting your house. And Get Out was one such film. Brilliant film. and cause for so much conversation because, again, it's a black person's perspective and interpretation of a horror film. For white people, where white people are the leading cast of horrors. Horrors are someone coming to kill them, someone, them being haunted, being possessed, being chased. There's forever someone trying to harm them, right? Whereas in the black horror films, it's white people. White people are what is cause for concern for black people. And in Get Out, Jordan Peele did it so well to make the audience so uncomfortable with the situation Daniel Kaluuya's character found himself in. I was talking to my friend and I was saying so many of us, so many people of color have experienced that garden party scene. Just being so uncomfortable. You're in a predominantly white environment and you're just like, oh no, this is not, I'm not comfortable here. It's just, no. Whether it is a party, whether it's in the office space, whether it's just the country that you live in that's predominantly white, you found yourself in situations like this. If it's in an office space, your boss might make a joke and you're like, that's not funny. But it's such an uncomfortable situation. It's such a white situation that you just chuckle because it's awkward and it's weird. And this is where I love the introduction of like Lakeith Stanfield and I don't know what her name is, the girl that plays the maid, for their characters, because it is this, if you see sort of another black person in the space, the two of you sort of look at each other like, is this a safe space or are we both awkward? Are we both like not okay with being here? Because and sometimes you're in these spaces and all you want to tell the next person of color is like, get out, this is abort mission, go home, in fact. So that was, I think, in terms of a horror, on the face of it, I guess, people looking for blood, guts, gore are not going to find that here because it's something so, I want to say so niche, but experienced by a demographic that doesn't have themselves represented in horror films like this, because the token black person is always the first one to die, right? that's the running joke in slashes. They are always the first one to go. A lighter version of that is a film I saw called The Blackening. It is hilarious. It's basically a group of black friends who put themselves sort of like in a Scream kind of environment, right? It's not a parody film, but it makes such a large commentary on that genre, on that sort of plot. That I think the tagline is we can't all be the first to die. It is hilarious, but and it's filled with pop culture references and referencing like horror scenarios, and it's just really funny. But at the end of the film, they've sort of they've sort of survived this thing, and they're like, yeah, so we're gonna call the cops, and they just start cracking up because that is the most ridiculous thought to them, because the cops aren't going to help them. Like, no. The cops are going to find a way that this is their fault, or they're the ones that's going to end up dying because they called the cops. And this is such, again, not a new commentary on the African American experience, right? And their relationship with the police, and how tumultuous and dangerous that relationship is. I can fully acknowledge that as a South African, that has never been my experience. Just never. Nothing about our interactions with the cops cannot be solved with a young Coke and a pie, or just, we good? Okay, cool, great. And I completely understand the privilege in that there is no innate fear in me when I encounter the police. There's not this constant awareness of my skin color when I encounter the police. And I completely understand that that is not the experience of Black people living in sort of Western societies, whether it is your Americas or your Europes. That is not their experience. They are fully aware of the color of their skin and the environment that they're in, and what that is perceived if ever they are in not even compromising situations, but just in situations where they may need the police and they could be the victim of the police as opposed to actually being helped by them. So that it's done in such a jokey manner at the end of the film, but it's a very real commentary. There is a short film that won the Academy Award for the best short film, and it's called Two Distant Strangers. And it's a Groundhog Day situation between an African American guy and a white policeman. That is as much as I'm going to say about that film. You need to watch it. It is brilliant. It is brilliant. There is the final shot of that film. It's an overhead shot. It is stunning. It is stunning. I kind of want to be like, if you're just sort of lightly watching the film, fine. But when it comes to the final shot of that film, just pay attention to that shot. Just look at the detail. Look at the picture that is being shown to you. Just experience the final shot of that film. It is so good. It is so stunning. And it is so subtly done that, again, if you're not paying attention, you might miss it. But pay attention to it. Watch that film, because it's so good. I could reference so many things about the Black horror genre, right? And this fear of being a Black person in everyday society, that horror to a person of color doesn't look like it does to white people. It doesn't. Dare I say that in horror films with a white leading cast, it's always consequence, right? It's consequence that comes after them. It is the consequences of their own actions that comes after them. Because if you just take it as, I know what you did last summer, right? Those kids killed someone and they were facing the consequences of their actions. If you take Nightmare on Elm Street, the kids were facing the consequences of the parents' actions. Their fear is really funny because if you read into it somehow, it's the consequences of their actions that is coming after them. I mean, hauntings you could take in a whole different route, right? Being haunted is, again, just something that's happened to them. They've moved into this house and something's after them. So they have to face that thing and conquer it and and come out at the end a friend of mine and I were discussing that this thing of the final girl, right? Or and usually it's a girl, but the final character that always survives and triumphs and makes it out. If you just think of Scream, Sydney has been chased for years. Just for years. How many Scream movies are there now? 6? 7? Even more so, Halloween. Jamie Lee Curtis has been going through it for decades. And she just makes it through this thing every single time. The black characters, first 20 minutes of the film, danzos. Thank you, goodbye. And when you look at black films, it's the white people they're afraid of. And it's them having to fight this thing on their own, just going at it. Again, to come back to his house. How do I say this without spoiling it? They do address what's happening in the house, and they just treat it with skepticism or not being believed. And at some point, they don't want to say anything anymore because they might get sent back to Sudan if it seems like they're problematic. Because you also don't want to be problematic to the country that is letting you live there. And that in itself is just so problematic. That in itself is such a big problem. But I honestly love the social commentary of his house and the topics that they're discussing. Again, I will touch wood, I will never, but up until now in my life, I have not experienced the refugee, asylum seeker, immigrant experience. I'm in South Africa and I'm from South Africa and I'm here. No one has ever said to me, go back to your country. I lived in Europe for a little while, and even then I didn't experience that. And that is something I can discuss in detail because I think many things factors into that. And the fact that I'm as light as I am, I think also plays a big role in that. But that's a discussion for another time. But yeah, that hasn't been my experience, this force to assimilate, forced to adapt, to survive in a country, because if you don't, they might send you back. And yet everything they do makes you want to go back. That you'd rather face war, you'd rather face genocide than be in a country that is a safe haven, but you're not safe. You're not. There's one scene in there that is even more jarring. But yeah, you've got to watch it. I think if we chat about this, if you guys watch it, please chat to me about it, because I can't wait to talk about it. But there's one scene that is where you're just like, this infuriates me. This infuriates me. But watch it. Yeah. So that's definitely his house. And again, what I loved about, again, the use of color in film is just, it's such a subtle but so impactful device. What they did with Get Out, what Jordan did was this again, back to the garden party, right? This beige color palette, this beige. Everyone was in whites and beige, and just this whitewashed party. Not so much in just that the people were white, but their clothes as well had no color. And he did that so well with Lakeith's character as well, to show that brainwashing to that extent that even he is just in this beige clothing. One thing that I love is that Daniel Kaluuya was cast because he's such a dark-skinned character, and he's so stark against this beige color grade of this film, which is amazing. And at the end of the film, the scene with the TV, what I love that they did with the color there, they sort of grade him as well. You see this in the poster too. He sort of has this gray tinge to him now, and it's sort of also this show of just sucking the life, the culture, the ethnicity right out of him. He's just graying now, which is so great. Which is really great. It was a really good device to use there. So yeah, they aren't generic horrors. They are not. But they definitely 100% exemplify and hold a mirror to society, and to say this is the Black horror experience. This is what horror is to Black people. It's not a rando with a knife that I can outrun and outfight. It's not that. It's not a ghost that's trying to get me. Not something I can't see. It is very much something I can see. It is very much people I interact with on the daily. That is the horrific experience for me. And that is cause for good conversation. That is cause for evaluate yourself as a society and go, okay. Like, yeah. I know that scene from Get Out where he's trying to find the keys and he's yelling at the girlfriend to get his keys. It causes you such anxiety because, again, you know those experiences. You know being in spaces where you need to leave now. Like, you need to leave right now. And sometimes the person that you're with just isn't getting your haste, is not grasping that we need to leave this situation right now. Like, we don't need to be talking about it. Find our keys. Let us go. We will discuss this in the car. Are you kidding me? We're not going to stand here and talk about this right now. We need to leave quick, fast, in a hurry. And as you're watching that, you're like, oh my gosh, why is she not hurrying up? Why is she fumbling? Hurry up and go. But then, of course, you get it. That face change that she does as well. Gorgeous acting, just to be like, you dummy. I'm not an ally to you. I was never an ally to you. Why would you think that? I am not your friend. There's so much to talk about. I could ramble on and on and on and on about those two films. Again, I haven't said much on Two Distant Strangers because I really don't want to give anything away about it. I said what I said, so please go watch it. I think it is just 20 minutes or 24 minutes at most. So it's not even a lot of your time, but it's 100% a film that should be seen. And then just for some levity, just for a reprieve from his house and Get Out, watch The Blackening. It is hilarious. And it's just fun. It's just fun. So do that. Because it's horror month, right? It's October. It's the spookies. So go and watch the spookies. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode of The Unemployed Actress. This week I didn't speak about being an unemployed actress or anything to do with my career, really. It is just movies that I enjoy and I feel like you should definitely go see. So please go see them. Thank you so much for watching. Again, do the things that need thinking. Like, share, subscribe, comment, do all of that. Let's have a conversation. Go watch these films. They are so good. And if you don't believe me, believe the Academy, believe the tomato meter, if you will, believe IMDb and its reviews. Go and see these films. Until next week. Bye.